Hello, welcome back to Quilts and Other Happy Accidents. I'm Sherri. I have a half-baked idea, but I'm going to see if it works, and if it does, I'm going to share it with everybody. When my mother comes to my house, she wraps a napkin around her glass because it's cold, or she doesn't want the perspiration, the sweat on her hand. So I decided I could use a coffee holder and probably make some sort of a gizmo that would fit the glass. So I saved a couple of different coffee sleeves, right? But I like this one is a little wider than the other one. I like the wider one. I think it'll do a better job of helping to insulate. So the first thing I did, after I decided which one I wanted and made sure it fit my glass, I ran some photocopies of this shape. Now I want to save this. In case it doesn't work, I want to modify it later. And then I took my ruler and I added a 1/2 inch to each side. That may be too much, but I'd rather be able to cut it down later than have it too small and have to start all over. Now you could just use a paper template, right? But with rotary cutting, inevitably I nick the paper and pretty soon the shape isn't working anymore. So instead, I'm going to create a template out of old X-ray film. Now you don't have to have anything special. I just happen to have old X-ray film because a friend of mine was a radiology tech back in the day when they used film. You could use a good heavy piece of cardboard or cardstock. Whatever you've got can become a template. What I know from years past of making templates is that even this X-ray film, I can nick it up and get it out of shape pretty easily. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces and super glue them together. I've changed the blade on my rotary cutter and I've used an old blade, right? I keep these old blades for crafts and weird things. Once you cut this X-ray film or anything with this rotary cutter, you're not going to be able to use it for fabric. So keep some old blades around for crafting. Now, the other thing I've done is I am just loving this rotating mat because it makes cutting odd shapes much easier. So I'm just going to line this up because as you can probably see, the shape on my pattern is, I ran out of paper. I mean, I added that 1/2 inch. Well, it didn't go all the way to the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and use my ruler here. I'm going to try not to nick up this piece of paper. I can always start over, but I'd rather not. There we go. Now you can see why I taped it down, because this paper wants to move around all over the place, and it's moving a little bit. It won't matter at the end of the day, because when I get the 2 of them glued together, I'll have a nice even surface to work with. Now again, I'm using my household scissors to cut this, because it'll ruin your fabric scissors. All right, let's glue it together. So I have a funny story. The first time I did this, oh, and don't glue on top of your good cutting mat. The glue may come out and it'll make a mess of your cutting mat. Yeah, I learned that the hard way too. Looky there, they are the same size. They look weird. Anyway, so one of the first times I made my own template and I used super glue, I put the glue too close to the edge and it squirted out as I picked it up to press it. And next thing I knew, my fingers were glued to my template and I couldn't get them unglued. And I did what cats do when they get a piece of tape on their foot. If you've ever seen a cat get tape on their foot, it drives them crazy and they just keep doing this, right? Yeah, I walked around the house doing that and then realized how silly I looked. All right, this will dry and you can see it's going to work great. Here's my original pattern piece. Ta-da! One template made. Okay, my template is dry. It's not moving around. I've got my two pieces. They're pretty sturdy. They're not going to be like the acrylic that we buy, so you still have to be a little careful with them, but they do a pretty good job this way. I've got two fat quarters here that I've put right sides together. That's really important because the way I'm going to sew this together, well, I'll show you when I put it all together. I've already cut a piece of batting out of some scrap batting. And I'm going to use the ruler to help me keep these ends straight. Yeah, I'm not sure how much this rotating Mac is helping me today. Of course, my workspace is messy too, so that's part of the problem. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put these together like I'm going to sew them. So, batting to the wrong side of one. There we go. Flip it over. And I'm going to sew it together this way. Now, remember I put right sides together? Here's what happens if you don't. You get two curves that look like this, but you can't put them together because, well, it just doesn't work that way. Let's go to the sewing machine. So here I am at the sewing machine. We're getting ready to put this together. Remember to cut your fabric right sides together. I'm going to do this like this. So I've got right sides together. I'm going to leave an opening on the inside curve. So let me mark that with pins. There's a time for pins and there's a time for clips. Now remember, the clips are going to have to get in the way of the sewing machine. So pins work better for this to mark where I want things. The other thing I'm going to do is use this elastic headband, elastic hairband. There we go. And I'm going to pin it in place because this is going to become my loop. Now, for it to be the loop, you put it between the two right sides. So you're going to have to over sew it there. And about half of it is going to get caught and come out the other side. So let's do a clip on each one of these because it's a little too heavy for a pin, but I really want those ends next to each other. All right, so I've got my opening so I can flip it over. I've got my tie in place. Let's sew it up. In true Sherri style, I'm just eyeballing that 1/4 inch to make my turn. Because the truth is, it's going to be turned inside, it's going to be stitched over. I can always add a stitch just like this. One more. There we go. Okay, now I can't sew over these clips, so I'm going to take this one off and this one off and pinch this between my fingers to hold it in place. There we go. Come on, baby. You can do it. See, I knew you could do it. There we have it. Let's see what we've done. I'm taking my pins out. Now, I know from years of sewing clothing that I'm going to have to trim some of this away from these corners so that they turn a little more easily and square up. Don't cut through the seam, that would be bad. But there we go, that works. Really, I'm just trimming the batting away from this edge so that I can get a nice crisp corner. Okay. Now, if you remember my stiletto, which is really a cuticle stick, it works great for turning corners too. There we go. All right, let's get that corner out a little better. Do you see why I left that 3-inch opening? It makes it so much easier to get up into these corners and tidy this up. There we go. Now I'm going to top stitch this as well for 2 reasons. I think I like the look of it a lot. It does flatten it out and help it hold its shape. And it's going to catch this elastic tie in another section so that it doesn't pull loose. All right, so we're just going to gently turn this in to finish this seam. I will put in a few hand stitches, but right now I'm just doing the top stitching to get everything done. All right, here's the thing about top stitching. You want to start in the middle of a long seam so that you've got plenty of time to get around the corners. Okay, so I'm actually going to start like here. I'm going to lengthen out my stitch because this is just its top stitch. Don't be afraid of your pins. When they're perpendicular to the fabric, 99 times out of 100, your sewing machine will skip right over them. right, let's see if it fits the glass that I started with. Look at that. Isn't that great? So you can see at my finger, I've got that little elastic. It actually kind of blends in with the fabric, which is cool. All I need is a little button here, and it'll fit a variety of different glasses. I really like the size of this, so as you're holding on to it on a hot summer day and it sweats, your hand won't get cold and it won't get so much moisture. I suppose you could make this without the batting in it. I just don't know how effective that would be. I'll keep playing with it and let you know. I did try another closure that I don't like nearly as well. I tried it with a little Velcro. It was harder to line up to wrap around. I don't know, maybe I need to do more than eyeball. Maybe I should actually measure something. But that wouldn't be true Sherri style. Why would I want to do that? At any rate, so today we've covered a lot of material. We've covered how to make your own template out of any material. I use X-ray film. You could use cardboard. You could use whatever you want. And you start with something you got for free. And now you've got something that's really useful. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, give me a thumbs up or subscribe. Share with your friends. Thanks for watching.